Ever wish you could just sit down with somebody from history? You know, like actually talk to them. Really get to know what they were thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're going to kind of do that.
Okay.
We're going deep into the Tudor court through the work of Hans Holbein the Younger,
You know the painter.
the guy who brought the whole era to life.
Yeah. I mean, his portraits, they aren't just, like pretty pictures. They really give us a glimpse into the lives of some of history's biggest figures.
Totally. And we've got some great guides for this journey.
Right.
Dr. Elizabeth Goldring, she's a leading expert on all things Tudor art and culture. And we've also got insights from Kate Hurd. She curated an awesome Holbein exhibition at Buckingham Palace.
Oh, wow. So we're talking like the real deal here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so where do we even begin? What's the setting?
Well, picture this. It's 1526.
Okay.
Holbein arrives in England,
Right.
stepping right into the Tudor court.
I bet that was a scene.
Oh, yeah. Already full of, like, artistic influences from all over Europe.
What kind of stuff? Give me an example.
Like Italian Renaissance sculpture, you've got the elegance of French court painting.
Oh, I see. So they're pulling from everywhere.
Yeah, it was a real melting pot of styles.
Makes sense. The Tudors loved showing off.
Oh, totally. They wanted everyone to see how cultured they were.
Okay, but so how did Holbein fit into all of this?
Well, he used a lot of the same techniques and materials as other artists,
Okay.
but he stood out.
How so? What made him different?
His work had this incredible realism.
So, like, super detailed.
Oh, incredibly detailed.
Isn't it more than just a normal portrait?
Way more. He didn't just capture, like, a likeness.
What do you mean?
He got their personalities.
Oh, wow.
Like, you can look at one of his paintings and you feel like you're looking into their soul.
Okay, so this guy, he was born with talent.
Yeah, he was honing his skills from early on.
Where?
Before England, he was already making a name for himself in Basel.
Okay. Did he do anything famous there?
He did a bunch of portraits of Erasmus.
Wait, Erasmus the writer?
Yeah,
Wow.
that was a turning point for
For like
him.
a big break.
Oh, yeah. Those portraits, they really captured Erasmus's intelligence and his wit. People took notice.
I see. They showed what Holbein could really do.
Right. It wasn't just painting a face.
More like capturing an essence.
Exactly. And that got him noticed by some pretty important people. Led him right to the Tudor court.
It's amazing how a few good portraits can change your whole life. So we've got portraiture becoming this big deal.
Right.
But wasn't this also the time when tapestries were super popular?
Yeah. The Tudors loved their tapestry.
Those massive woven things, like the ultimate status symbol, right?
Totally. They were seen as super luxurious, even more valuable than paintings at the time.
So was Henry VIII even interested in portraits at first? I mean, with all those tapestries around?
Well, he liked Holbein's talent.
Okay.
He used it for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Designs for court festivals, even jewelry.
Oh, wow. So like a multi-talented artist.
Well,
But he hadn't quite grasped, like, the power of portraiture, right? At least not at first.
right. It's funny to think of a king needing to be convinced about the power of a good portrait.
Yeah. But things were changing.
Yes.
Portraiture was evolving. It wasn't just capturing a likeness anymore. It was about projecting an image.
And that was perfect for Henry VIII. He really wanted to cement his authority.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Make himself look powerful and legitimate.
Exactly. And Holbein, with his skill, he was the perfect artist for the job.
He could capture not just the face, but like a sense of majesty.
Oh, absolutely. And the way Holbein's portraits of Henry were used,
Yeah.
they were everywhere.
Like mass-produced.
Basically, reproduced, shared all over the place. They became like the image of the king.
So thanks to Holbein, everyone knew what Henry VIII looked like.
Exactly. It's like those portraits were the king's brand.
That's wild. It really shows you the power of art to shape people's views.
Absolutely. So we have this super talented artist in a court obsessed with image and power. How about we get into some of the nitty-gritty of Holbein's work?
Okay, let's do it.
I'm dying to know how he got that realism. Like, what was his secret?
Well, one thing that's super cool about Holbein,
Mm-hmm.
we can actually see his process.
How?
Through his sketches.
Oh, wow.
Take his chalk drawings of the Thomas More family.
Okay.
They have this incredible, like, immediacy. It's almost like you're there in the room with them.
It's amazing how much life he could get into a simple chalk drawing. Like, what were his techniques?
He'd use colored chalks, sometimes even like wet them with a brush
Uh-huh.
to build layers, give it that depth and texture.
I see.
He was a master of light and shadow.
Yeah, you can see that.
Little variations to create these incredibly lifelike details.
I mean, it's crazy. You can practically feel the texture of their skin, the weight of their clothing. It's amazing.
It really is.
But did he always aim for, like, perfect accuracy?
Yeah.
Or was there some, flattering going on?
That is a good question. We can't forget, these portraits were commissioned. These people had expectations.
Right, they wanted to look good.
Of course. Who wouldn't want to look their best for a royal portrait?
Exactly.
Look at the portrait of Sir Henry Guilford.
Okay.
Compare the final painting to Holbein's drawings, you'll notice something.
What's that?
He actually tweaked Guilford's face a bit.
Like Photoshop before Photoshop.
You could say that. Maybe to make him look more authoritative.
Interesting. So Holbein had to balance artistic integrity with keeping his clients happy.
It was a delicate dance.
True.
And he did it well. That's part of what made him such a sought-after artist.
So he had talent, adaptability.
And don't forget, savvy.
Right. No wonder he did so well in the Tudor court.
He knew how to play the game.
He wasn't just a painter. He was a master of his craft and a keen observer of human nature.
Oh, absolutely. And a smart player in that whole courtly world.
Which brings us to another amazing thing about Holbein. His versatility. We talked about these big portraits.
Right.
But he's also incredible at miniatures.
Oh, those tiny portraits.
Yep. It's fascinating. The rise of portrait miniatures during his time in England.
Tell me more.
We're talking teeny tiny portraits, often on vellum or card, worn as jewelry.
Wow. I've seen some of those. The detail is mind-blowing.
Seriously. How did he do it?
Well, that incredible draftsmanship definitely helped.
Right.
But he probably also picked up some special techniques for miniature painting.
Makes sense.
Maybe from Lucas Hornbout,
Who's that?
a Flemish artist, like a pioneer of miniature portraits.
So there's all this artistic exchange happening across Europe.
Absolutely. Artists influencing each other, pushing boundaries.
And Holbein was right there in the middle of it.
So how do we even know who these people are in Holbein's paintings? They didn't have Instagram back then.
Good point. Actually, we have to thank Sir John Cheek for a lot of the identifications.
Who was he?
A scholar, friend of Holbein.
Yeah.
He added labels to a bunch of the drawings, saying who the subjects were.
Oh, wow. Like the original Tudor portrait catalog.
Exactly.
Lifesaver for art historians. But I bet there are still some mysteries.
I know tons. Some portraits still haven't been identified. It's like a big puzzle.
Trying to figure out who they were.
Yeah, using records, looking at their clothes, even their faces.
I wonder what stories are hidden in those unidentified portraits.
It makes you think, what were their lives like?
Right. Did they ever imagine their faces would be, like, studied by us centuries later?
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And just shows the power of portraiture, how it connects us with the past.
You know what? I need a minute to process all of this.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
We'll be right back to explore even more of Holbein's amazing portraits and the stories they tell.
So we've been talking about kings and queens, but did Holbein paint anyone else? Like, did he ever branch out beyond those inner circles?
You know, he actually had a pretty diverse group of clients.
Oh.
Yeah. He painted courtiers, ambassadors, merchants, even soldiers.
Wow, so a real mix.
Oh, and of course, the women of the court.
Right, like Anne Boleyn.
Her, Jane Seymour, and others who, played a part in all of Henry VIII's drama.
So we're talking all levels of society, not just the very top.
Yeah, but I'm guessing even the, quote, lower classes were still pretty well off.
Oh, for sure. To have your portrait done by Holbein, that wasn't cheap.
Definitely not. His work was in high demand. Having a Holbein portrait, it showed you had status, wealth, you were sophisticated.
So even within this elite group, there had to be some portraits with, like, really interesting stories.
Yeah, definitely. One that comes to mind is the portrait of Charles Wingfield.
What's so special about that one?
Well, he's depicted bare-chested.
What?
Yeah. Just wearing this pendant, super unusual for a formal portrait.
I can't even imagine that today.
Right, going to a portrait sitting and having to take your shirt off.
So strange. Do we know why he's painted like that?
It's a mystery. Maybe it refers to a sporting victory.
Huh. Or maybe it's more personal, symbolic. Who knows?
It's what makes history so fascinating, right? All these little glimpses into the past. They just make you want to know more.
Totally. And Holbein's work, it's full of those little details, these mysteries that get your imagination going.
Speaking of mysteries, let's go back to Anne Boleyn. We've talked about the debate around her portrait, but There just don't seem to be that many of them.
Compared to someone like Jane Seymour, right? Her image is everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think maybe there weren't many portraits of Anne because of, her and Henry's relationship, how things ended so badly?
It's possible. I mean, after her execution, they might have wanted to, like, erase her image, get rid of any trace of her.
It's kind of a dark thought, but it makes sense.
Right. It reminds us that these portraits are more than just art. They were tied up in politics and the power dynamics of the time.
So they can be manipulated, hidden, even destroyed.
Exactly. They don't always tell the whole story.
So we have to be careful when we look at them, right? Consider the context. Definitely. Think about who had the power, the biases of the artist, the subject.
Right. All important stuff.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Holbein in the Tudor court, but let's zoom out for a second.
Okay.
What about his impact on, like, later artists? Did his style influence anyone?
Oh, massively. His focus on realism, the detail, the way he captured, the psychology of his subjects, it set a new standard for portraits.
And that iconic image of Henry VIII.
It became the image of the king,
Yeah,
copied and reinterpreted for centuries.
it's true. And it's not just Henry.
You see Holbein's influence in so many artists who came after him. Even if they weren't trying to copy him directly, he raised the bar. His work still inspires artists today.
I love that. The idea that an artist's work can just ripple through time.
Yeah, influencing generations to come. Pretty amazing.
So back to Holbein and the Tudor court.
Hmm.
We know court life was a bit, well, treacherous.
A bit. It was full of intrigue, rivalry, everyone trying to get ahead.
Exhausting, right?
Oh, totally. And in that world, image was everything. One wrong move could be the end of you.
So how did Holbein survive all that? How did he stay in favor, keep getting those commissions, even as people around him, rose and fell from power?
Well, clearly he was good at reading people.
Right.
He was a master of diplomacy, maybe even a bit of a chameleon.
Adapting to different personality.
Exactly. He had to change his style, his approach, to please whoever was in charge.
And don't forget, Henry VIII went through 6 wives, each one with their own supporters, their own enemies.
Yeah, Holbein had to walk a tightrope.
To not offend anyone, to stay neutral.
All while creating portraits that those in power would love.
It must have taken serious skill, talent, political smarts, and maybe a bit of luck.
No doubt, the fact that he not only survived but thrived in that environment, it really says something.
Makes you wonder what was going through his head as he was painting these powerful people. Was he just observing? Or was he more involved in all that court drama?
It's hard to know for sure, but I think he was more than just a painter.
Right.
He was a confidant, an advisor, a witness to history.
He had a front row seat to some of the most dramatic events of that time.
And through his art, he captured it all.
Not just what these people looked like, but the feeling of the era, their hopes, anxieties, all those complex relationships.
Exactly. He captured the essence of the time.
Okay, so we've talked about the artistry, the influence, Holbein's ability to navigate that tricky Tudor court. But let's not forget, behind these grand portraits, we're talking about real people.
Right. People with their own lives, their own joys and sorrows.
Look at his sketches of Henry VIII's children. They weren't just royal heirs. They were kids dealing with all the pressures of that life.
In those drawings, you can see their vulnerability, their youth.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about kings and queens, battles and treaties.
It's about people, ordinary people living through extraordinary times.
And those human stories, they're what make the past come alive, connect us to the people who came before.
Exactly. We can relate to those experiences even across centuries.
So we've been looking at the portraits that have survived, the ones giving us this glimpse into the Tudor world.
Right.
But what about the ones that are lost, destroyed, hidden, forgotten?
Makes you wonder, what treasures are still out there waiting to be found?
What secrets they might hold, what new perspectives they could give us.
It's like a giant art history treasure hunt.
Totally. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will make the next big discovery.
That would be amazing.
We've really gone deep with Hans Holbein the Younger, haven't we?
We have.
From his start in the Tudor court to, like, all the little details of how he worked and those mysteries around some of his subjects.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we can learn about a whole period of history just by, looking at one artist's portraits.
It's true. Holbein's work really shows us what Tudor society was like. All the layers of it, what they wanted, what they were afraid of. But before we wrap up, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from our Holbein deep dive?
I think it's that his portraits are so much more than just, pretty pictures. They're like historical documents.
Well,
They're windows into the lives of these people who shaped Tudor England. And they remind us that history, it's made up of real people with their own stories, their own, hopes and fears.
exactly. It's easy to think of historical figures as these, like, larger-than-life characters, but Holbein's portraits make them real. We see their human side, what they might have been feeling.
And that connection across time is what makes art so amazing. It lets us step into the past, see the world the way they did, understand their experiences.
Yeah, it's like we're talking to them through the centuries.
It really is.
And Holbein, with his talent for capturing not just what people look like, but who they were, he's our guide.
Totally.
He's the one who helps us understand.
I like that. Like he's translating between then and now.
Exactly. He was a master at telling stories,
Yeah.
using his brush to show us power, ambition, love, loss.
And those stories still matter to us today because they're about, what it means to be human. Those themes are timeless.
Here's a thought for our listeners, something to think about.
Go for it.
Knowing how deep and artistic Holbein's work was, it makes you wonder what other treasures are still out there, right?
It's like waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. What might be hidden in some archive, a forgotten sketch, a portrait we didn't even know existed. What new things could they teach us about the Tudors? It's exciting. It shows that we're still learning about history. So, to all our listeners who've been hooked on this deep dive, I say keep exploring.
Yes.
Check out that Buckingham Palace exhibition catalog. Dive into Dr. Goldring's research. It's fascinating. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to find the next Holbein masterpiece or solve a historical mystery.
Keep looking, keep asking questions, keep going deep.
There's a whole world of art and history waiting to be discovered.